I think most things are all good. I think it's the first time we've probably felt since pre-season that we've got everybody back. Obviously we've brought new players in as well, so it's just like the end of pre-season really now, and we're trying to get everything put in place. But feels a bit like a fresh start actually. We're getting the boys back from the international games because they've been away for the couple of weeks. But no, I think we're all in good shape, yeah.
Hello everybody. Next up we go down to the south coast to St Mary's, where we'll be hosted by Southampton. Kick-off will be 3 p.m. on Saturday, turnstiles permitting. And with little in the way of engineering works to bother you, it should be plain sailing all the way until the first points failure somewhere between Vauxhall and Clapham Junction. So Southampton then. They've yet to register their first win in the league this season. An opening day 3-1 reverse at Everton was followed up with a 1-1 home draw against Manchester United. And a 2-2 draw up on Tyneside, courtesy of a 96-minute penalty from James Ward-Prowse. That point ended an away run which saw them fail to pick up a single point outside Hampshire since early March. All that has left them in 13th spot. Top on goal difference of a group of 3 teams all on 2 points, the others being Palace and Leeds. Somewhere in all that, they walked through to the third round of the League Cup, beating Newport 8-0 on their own patch. Sheffield United await in the next round. Daisy, the personal assistant with a beautiful smile, from whom I no longer have to remain socially distant, informed me that they brought in 5 first-teamers during the recently shut window. First of these was already there though, given that Theo Walcott spent the bulk of last season on loan from Everton. Walcott arrived on a free on the expiry of his contract, having fallen out of favour at Everton. He's one of those players who it feels like they always score against us, though if Daisy or I could be bothered to look up the stats, it probably isn't quite as bad as we think. The so-called undisclosed fee paid to Brest for left-back Romain Perraud is said to be €13 million, which is somewhere around £11.1 million in sterling. He's played 2 of the 3 games in the league so far, and he's been capped at most age levels by France up to under-21s, although the step up to full international honours is one that appears to have been beyond him to date. At Brest he was known for his attacking prowess, so it remains to be seen how he'll deal defensively in this league. Now, if you'd all like to stop giggling at my use of the word Brest for a moment, they also brought in another fullback in the form of Tino Livramento. Southampton paid £5 million for the right-back, who was Chelsea's Academy Player of the Year last season, though the pensioners are believed to have inserted one of those buyback clauses they seem quite fond of. Livramento, who captained England at under-17 level, has recently progressed up to the ranks of the under-21s. Further forward, the Saints were the ones to take a chance on Blackburn's Adam Armstrong. Striking resources were in need of a boost following the £25 million departure of Danny Ings to Villa, and Blackburn, no doubt, bit the proverbial hand off when offered £15 million for a player they'd signed for £1.75 million from Newcastle. Armstrong was on target in the 3-1 defeat up at Everton, and was also the victim of the foul from Lascelles that led to the late penalty up at St James's Park the other week. Central defender Lianco, whose first name really ought to be Matt, arrived from Torino. Although Brazilian by birth, he has Serbian and Portuguese heritage, and actually played for the Serbian under-19 side before reverting to Brazil for under-20 and under-21 football. Southampton is said to have paid £6.5 million for the defender, who's being touted as a replacement for the Leicester-bound Vestergaard, though he's yet to make his debut. Well, we've got a lot to get through this week, so let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. It's a special international edition. England got through qualification for next season's Sunburn Fest in Qatar unscathed. Declan got man of the match against Hungary, presumably much to the annoyance of the Liverpool Echo, who run a laughable summer campaign against the midfielder, largely on the basis that he wasn't Jordan Henderson. Declan's drink miming antics in front of the Hungarian fans was amusing, if possibly ill-advised, but the best comment made regarded Harry Kane, whose confused look was attributed to his not being used to seeing a teammate lift a cup. Still, I'm sure if he hangs around for long enough, Spurs have every chance of getting somewhere in the Thursday night Isthmian League. Henderson's place in the pecking order was established when Southgate decided he could be trusted with the skipper's role against Andorra, while he gave the good players a day off. We were rewarded by a turgid display that could be flagged up next time the Liverpool Echo tries to convince anyone that Henderson is of international quality. Elsewhere, police intervened during the Brazil vs Argentina match, when 2 Spurs players and a Villa player were accused of breaking COVID rules. Spurs have indicated that their players left without permission and will be fined when they get back home, which seems a bit of a shame. After all, anyone who has to ply their trade in N17 can hardly be blamed for wanting to go elsewhere from time to time. Meanwhile, Brazil has asked FIFA to invoke the 5-day rule on players prevented by their clubs from joining the squad. 8 players are likely to be affected in the Premier League unless the clubs involved can talk their way out of it or simply ignore it. Let's move on to us. Well, we kicked into action at the end of the window in the end. All sorts of rumours were flying around about the myriad delays that seemed to be affecting the conclusion of the Kurt Zouma deal. It all seemed so familiar, with deal terms and a mystery knee injury both being blamed for things being held up at one stage or another. I suspect it may have just been one of those deals that took a while for no readily apparent reason. But let's face it, there has been previous in this regard. Zouma has been joined on the permanent roster by Croatian midfield Nikola Vlasic, who came in from CSKA Moscow for something like £25 million, depending on your exchange rate. His previous visit to these shores was not much of a success. He managed but 12 appearances for Everton before being shipped out to Moscow a few years ago. In Russia, he managed a goal every 3 games from midfield, and he'll be a useful addition, particularly in Europe. Defensive midfield options were bolstered by the loan arrival of Alex Kral. Ever since we started signing checkmates, this has been a move that has been much touted. The deal that has brought Kral in from a different part of Moscow, Spartak in this case, includes an option to make the deal permanent if all goes well. The window was good, really, by and by. One would have liked to have seen something more in the striking department, though, where Antonio is really all we have. The Euro A squad lists Benrahma, Lanzini, Bowen and Yarmolenko as forwards, which ought to be an indicator of sorts. Still, it was an improvement on recent years, with Mr. Moyes seemingly in charge of things recruitment-wise. At least there were no unknown South Americans turning up out of the blue, needing someone to introduce them to the manager at the start of training. On the pitch, the Palace result was a bit of a disappointment. They scored with pretty much their only 2 efforts on target. In between, though, there was some fine football played. The first goal started off with a ball through from Benrahma that was an absolute peach, but seems to have been overlooked when the plaudits were being dished out. Antonio's goal was the sort of thing that earned you the nickname Beast. Though it was a shame he couldn't mark his international debut with something similar. Jamaica going down 3-0 to Panama in a CONCACAF World Cup qualifier. The second Palace goal did involve some decent footwork from on-loan Conor Gallagher, but it was the overall defensive work leading up to both goals that was a source of some concern. There seemed to be a general tendency amongst the support to point an accusing finger in the general direction of Dawson regarding the goals. It seemed a little harsh to me, although it's fair to say the arrival of Zouma is likely to see Dawson watching more than he plays in the future. There's nothing disparaging meant in that statement. I think Dawson's performed out of his skin since his arrival from Watford. Far better than any of us had the right to expect given his pedigree. However, it would be a surprise to see him keeping Zouma out of the first 11 going forward. This week may be too early for the new boys to start. They won't have reported back from their respective nations till late in the week, and there would have been little time to acclimatise to their new surroundings, teammates or systems. So I wouldn't expect too much in the way of personal changes for the start at this weekend. For the hosts, they have doubts over midfielder Stuart Armstrong, who's a calf injury, irritating striker Shane Long, who's COVID, whilst the amusingly named Will Smallbone has a long-term knee problem. David Hasselhoff's press conference also brought forward the information that Walcott will miss out with a small issue. I'm sure we can get ointment for that. Well, this brings us on to the prediction. They're a little bit Jekyll and Hyde at the moment. By all accounts, they're a bit unlucky to be that close to defeat at Newcastle last week, even if they did need a penalty to get the point they might have otherwise deserved. However, there comes a point where you've got to look at yourselves and wonder what part you're playing in your own problems. There were times that they looked very iffy at the back against the Geordies, who've got their own problems to think about. Antonio, now with the added boost of being a full international, will be in the mood. So much will depend then on us firming up at the back. The Newcastle and Palace games are an example of us needing to score more than we conceded thanks to defensive frailties. However, on the whole, I think we'll have too much for them. I wouldn't rule out a draw, but I'm going to ride the early wave of optimism for yet another week, and I'm going to go for an away win. So, Mr. Winston, please wager the £2.50 I was saving up to pay my increased national insurance bill on an away win. We'll call it 2-1 to us, shall we? Enjoy the game.
Yes. Big knees up Mother Brown, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm regularly on the general discussion page. There's always someone who's got some information, so I love it. Yeah. It's great. Yes, it's excitement surrounded by imminent disappointment. That's what it mostly is.
Get on the forum at kumb.com. Come on, you irons.